So there has been a lot of positive buzz about the Elegoo Centauri Carbon, going even as far as saying that it's a total Bambu Lab P1 series clone, and not necessarily in a bad way, that the performance is the same and the speed is even better, but at half the price. Well, is this all hype or is this the real deal? Today, we're gonna do a full unboxing, setup, and review, and get to the bottom of this right after this.
Welcome to the show that sets your mind free. Tech and gadgets, 3D surprise. Captain Creativity. Honesty, insight to everybody. With David's guiding light, invention sparkles take their flight.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Captain Creativity. I am your host, David Merrill. And before we get into the unboxing of the Elegoo Centauri Carbon, I just want you to know that I saw this printer about a year ago at Rapid TCT in Los Angeles. And like most people in the 3D printing community at that time, we were all kind of scratching our heads to see how is this going to be a major differentiator. A lot of people claimed was a Bambu Lab P1P or a P1S clone. And the concern was it was going to be a lesser clone, basically a cheap knockoff. But then it started getting released and it started flooding the market and the price blew everyone away. The enclosed version is $299 and then the open frame version was $200. And so people were like, okay, well, for that price, if it is a clone and it actually performs as well as a P1P or a P1S, then sign me up. Well, anyway, I pre-ordered this a while back and it's been sitting in the background and I'm finally able to get into it. So today I really hope to test this out. I have a bunch of P1Ps here. I'm gonna definitely put some small and large prints against this as well as my P1 series. And I'm going to get to the bottom of this, if whether or not this is the ultimate clone or a cheap knockoff. So let's start unboxing it right now. All right, let's get into it. Right at the top, we have our user manual and our user guide, which talks about how to take everything out. I'll turn it over just so you can see what it looks like. See? So nicely packaged. Here's the cover. We're gonna just put that to the side for now. Okay, so we pulled it out. First, we're gonna go ahead and remove the foam inserts as instructed. We also have a box full of additional parts. All right, let's go ahead and remove the adhesive straps. Just have to basically cut this tie wrap over here, pull off the cardboard, and then there's a piece of foam in the poop chute tray. And then we basically have to remove screws here, here, and here. So basically just 3 screws. So in the box that we unpacked, there is the LCD screen, power cord, tool holder that we're gonna put on the side, and a bag of accessories, everything from grease to an adhesive stick, as well as Allen wrenches and screwdrivers, everything you need to perform maintenance on your printers right here. Okay, one of the things I do want to point out is that it comes with a PEI textured plate, but if you reverse it, you also have a PLA specific plate, which looks like it has a much smoother backing. It's optimized for PLA printing and adhesion. Something else to look at if you're having any kind of adhesion issues or working with PLA. I've had a lot of great success with textured PEI, so I think I'm gonna keep it on this for now. One of the things I see right away is that it has a nice guided area in the back to make sure that you put it down exactly where it needs to be. The next step is installing the LCD screen and turn it over. And the ribbon is going to go right into there. We're going to face the black part facing downwards where the sticker is. And we're going to just hook that up. And it just snaps right into place. And now just check out how easy it is. We just line it up with these grooves. And voila, done. That's it. Now we just got to peel this off. There you go. And for the last part, we're gonna just stick in our spool holder right over here. Just like that, done. I like the fact that the spool holder is on the side and there is a runout sensor right over here. Okay, a couple things to point out. There is in fact a poop chute. We can probably anticipate some sort of multicolored capability in the future. We also see air vents over here, and this actually has an air filter built into it. However, I do not see an easy means of removing it in case it gets dirty or something. There are screws and you could obviously remove the plate, but it's not an easy 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. There is a lid on the top if you're printing with ABS or PA or ASA, etc. You just drop it down and it's good to go. If you are working with PLA, you're going to want to remove the top cover when printing. Definitely very impressed so far. I could definitely see why people are saying it's a clone. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. The setup was a total of maybe 5 minutes. Actually, I don't even think it was that long, but it was super simple, as you could see. It was probably one of the easiest unboxings I've ever done. All right, let's get it started. Beautiful large LCD screen. That's already a major improvement over the Bambu Lab P series. Definitely larger, closer to something that you would see on the X1 series. So it's gonna ask us to choose a language. We're gonna go ahead and choose English and hit confirm. Okay, so it's now asking us to confirm that we removed all 3 of those screws. I'm gonna hit confirm. Ensure the chamber is free from any foreign objects. Yes, we removed all the foreign objects. So we're gonna hit confirm. Place the build plate correctly, which we did. Side A facing up, which it is. The process is expected to last for about 30 minutes. Okay, so let's hit start. And it's going to go through an entire barrage of tests. And as we can see, it's going to go ahead and heat the nozzle, then it's going to heat the bed, it's going to test heating the cooling fan, the main board cooling fan. It's going to then do some input shaping to compensate for vibrations and everything like that. And then of course it's going to do an automatic bed leveling. During the setup, you're going to hear it start making a lot of noise. That's normal. This is where it's going to take into account all the different vibrations and compensate for that. So don't be alarmed if you hear a noise like this during its calibration stage. And this should be happening at the input shaping stage of the calibration. Another thing I want to point out is that there is in fact a camera built in, so you can remotely monitor your prints. The calibration has completed. We're going to hit confirm. And at this point, we are ready to go. However, we are going to go ahead and connect it to the Wi-Fi and then see if there's an upgraded firmware that we could go to. The interface is quite nice. So you get a nice dashboard over here. Over here you have a bunch of different files that you can start printing with, and you can see your print history as well as things that you connect onto the USB drive. And then you have your settings section where you can manually adjust your temperature, your bed. You can go ahead and try to pull filament through your extruder. You can auto home, pretty much everything that you would expect to find in the settings, as well as fan controls. And then of course there's the extruder section where you can load and unload filament. The next section you have your settings, and it's over here that we can go ahead to connect our network. So here we're going to go ahead and select the network and then connect. So once you've gone ahead and connected to the network, you do have the ability to go over to the info section, which will give you a lot more information like serial number, etc. You could go to your camera section, in which you could see the list of videos that have been recorded, such as time lapses, etc. And then of course, now that we've gone ahead and updated the network settings, we can now check to see if there's a new version of firmware. So we're going to go ahead and click on that and update it. So over-the-air updates are possible with the Centauri Carbon. Okay, so now that we've done the firmware upgrade, we're going to go to settings just to confirm that we're all good, and we could see check for updates, and we're up onto the current version. So we're all good to go. But I usually like to do my calibration again after a firmware upgrade. That's just me. I think that sometimes there are improvements that go into the firmware. I'm not going to have you go through the whole thing with me, but I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to go ahead now and click one-click self-check, and that's going to go ahead and take me through the entire process again. So I'm going to go ahead and click select all and hit start. Okay, and with one click, I was able to go ahead and check off input shaping, PID tuning, and automatic leveling. So we're going to go through that entire process again, and I'll jump right back in once it's done. So we're going to load up some dark gray PLA Plus for the K2SO head. Start with a brand new roll, and I have 2 of these. So I'm going to put one on the Centauri Carbon and one on the Bambu Lab P1P. Here we go. Let's load it up. And we're gonna stick it right through there. Oh, that is so cool. All right, so there's a blue light that comes on right away. as soon as you stick that through, and I guess that gives you an indicator that it's working. And nothing's pulling it, so you definitely have to push it through. Yep, I definitely don't feel anything pulling it. But now I'm gonna go to the settings panel and see what we have to do next. So let's go ahead and load up our filament. So we're gonna go over here to settings. We'll go to extruder and we'll go ahead and hit load. So now at this point, the nozzle is heating up. And let's see how long it takes. Okay, so that's about 50 seconds. And now at this point, it should start grabbing the filament. And I definitely feel it grabbing it now. And I just saw the filament poop out on the back, which is great. So it says click completed if the filament is extruded, which it is. So we are good to go. Okay, let's get started with the software. Elegoo has a slicing software right over here called Elegoo Slicer. You download it easily from their website. Okay, so now let's do the ceremonial Benchy. I went ahead and I sliced this separately from Thingiverse. I did not use the files that come included because we know that the model that's already on there has been optimized, and so I want to give you a real world experience as if you were to use a slicer and throw on the model without any modification or tweaking. With that being said, it is in the process right now, as you can see. All right. Okay, we'll peel that off. All right, let's take a look at this. All right, so at first look, it looks pretty good. Not seeing any major issues that stand out. This is really, really good. So that's a really clean Benchy. I am very impressed with this. That is really, really good. And here we are with the P1P, doing a Benchy on here as well. And again, also cut from Bambu Studio and on regular settings, 0.20 millimeter in height, and we'll see what the results show. P1P is done. So let's go ahead and compare these. So basically, this one is the P1P, okay? And this one over here is the Centrauri. Again, they were both using a fresh batch of PLA, Sunlu PLA Plus. And so let's take a look. So if we take a look on the side and compare it side by side, you'll notice that they both, so it's interesting. On the P1P, I actually see a raised, like a little bit more of a defect here. Not a huge one. Like I said, it's so minor. It's like, I would be perfectly happy with either one of those. But this one here just has the darkening. This one doesn't actually, like when you touch it, doesn't actually have any kind of bump on it. This one, in fact, does have some sort of a bump. When we look at them underneath, just to show you how they both perform now, they were both on a PEI sheet. So there they are side by side. I would say that's kind of the same. I mean, I guess, you know, it would have been nice if this was a little bit more legible. Both of them did not perform. You know, I could have changed something in the settings. But again, I just threw the Benchy on and I wanted to see what I would get without any modification. So Centauri Carbon over here, let's turn it around. And so there you go. I would say also very, very similar. I would say the Centrauri is a little bit cleaner in this case. But I think the point here that I'm showing you this is that they are very, very similar. I mean, you could see here the P1P is a little bit more jaggedy on the bridge than it is on the Centauri Carbon, at least like underneath. You see like around this on the bottom part, where here you can see it's a lot more jaggedy over there. This is nitpicking, and I think the point here is that they're just fantastically similar. And I think that that is one of the key things to take away from here, is just how much quality you get for such a low price. Now let's go ahead and take a look at something much larger, something with a lot more detail and complexity to it. I have been working on a K2SO droid.
Congratulations, you are being rescued.
I'm building a large one along with my Iron Giant and a multitude of other things that I'm working on, but the K2SO is in the works, and I figured why not get a head start on the K2SO and build out the droid head. So now we've gone ahead and removed the supports in the middle. We put on supports around the perimeter and normal support. We made sure that it fits, and we get a total result of 10 hours and 2 minutes, and the total filament being used will be about half a roll of 420 grams of filament, just under half half a roll. Let's go ahead now and check out what Bambu did. So we did the same thing under Bambu Studio, and we removed the support. We made sure that the strength also has 3 walls, 5% infill as instructed by Droid Division, and then we went ahead and enabled normal supports as well. So we see here that the total is 424 grams and 10 hours and 9 minutes. Based on the individual slicers, it looks like these printers really go neck to neck, with Elegoo maybe being faster according to this. So let's find out. All right, so now it's time to print. We're gonna hit print. We're gonna go ahead and click upload and print, and we could check off here if we want to do the time lapse, and we are choosing here the textured build plate side A. So that's interesting. It actually is asking us what build plate we're using. So we're going to use side A here, and we're going to go ahead and hit upload and send it over to the printer. So now we're going to load it up, and as you can see, the screen looks absolutely fantastic and clear, really easy on the eyes, and something that we definitely don't have on the P1 series. And just a tip for you, if you are printing out any kind of helmets or anything that has a sphere to it and the extruder ends at the top, you're gonna get these kind of weird ringing here at the end as it gets to the top there. And if you don't like that, you can actually change that in the settings. There is a variable layer height that you can turn on. I'm playing around with it still, so I tried it and I did it on another version. I actually was using another material called PLA Meta to kind of give it a little bit of an extra shine. I don't know if I'm gonna like it or not like it, but I figured let's take a look. So this comes right off. Just, by the way, that's just like so beautiful how easy it comes off. And I actually do like this shine. Here's the difference between the two. For the first K2SO test, I used the Sunlu PLA Plus 2.0. And I took this off of the Centauri Carbon. It came off beautifully. I'm very, very happy with the results. I definitely see a seam over there, and there's always a seam. There is settings to kind of get rid of the seam, but everything else printed out really, really, really beautifully. Obviously on the inside we have a little bit of messiness, but remember I didn't put supports underneath it because I said, what's the point? No one's gonna see it. And this is a common thing that we do when we're printing helmets or robot head. You shouldn't waste time with putting supports in the center. So after I printed this one out, I wanted to play around with it, and I actually took out a different material called PLA Meta. This actually ends up coming out a little bit shinier. I just was curious to see how it would come out, and I also wanted to play around with the variable height setting. When I'm touching it, I don't really feel it. When I'm touching it on the other one, I definitely feel it. Visually, you could definitely see that this one is definitely more pronounced than this one. You can definitely see them both, but in terms of how they feel and how smooth they are, if I were to want to sand it, which I'm not going to, I'm going to print this all like in different colors and put it all together. I'm not sanding, I'm not painting it. I don't have that level of skill set, not yet. I'm still working on it. But so anyway, I really like the material, and it really again came out beautifully. Same idea, the seam came over here, but I could have gone rid of that if I played around with the slicer settings a little bit more. So I've gone through an exhaustive amount of testing here. As you can see, I had some really bad results on the P1P with the Sunlu PLA Plus profile, version 2.0 specifically. So as you can see over here, the first time around, I got some really horrible, I don't know if you would call that under extrusion. I don't know really what you would call it. It almost looks like the filament was just no good, right? I didn't believe that the P1P was the issue. I've been using this P1P constantly for the last 2 years. I know the P1P inside and out, and I definitely was a little bit taken back by this test because I know that this thing has given me some amazing parts that were large when doing the Iron Giant. I don't know what to say why this happened. Then I went ahead and I tried it again. And I did so this time with another roll of filament and on a different P1P printer. Same result. Now, it's not the file because we know we got other good results. The only thing I can think of is that it's again the Sunlu filament. Maybe that profile on Bambu Studio is no good, and I want to get to the bottom of this. So on the P1P, the PLA Meta came out perfectly fine. It's exactly the results that I would expect. There was something that it ended up doing, and again, it's because of the nature of the PLA Meta shiny material. You know, when you actually start slowing down, a tip you should know that when you start to slow down your extrusion, some of these shinier materials, you'll actually get more of a shine out of it. The only problem I had with the P1P when working with PLA Meta, so you could see over here how much of a extra shine, and that's likely because it started slowing down, and because it slowed down, it ended up creating, I think, more of a shine than what you would typically get. Now, just to give you a side-by-side comparison, here's the one that was done on the P1P, and here's the one that was done on the Elegoo Centauri. Obviously, we do see the same kind of slowdown. It's not as dramatic as the P1P. But one of the things, as I mentioned before, is the fact that this is brand new. My P1Ps have been here for over a year. There is going to be some kind of degradation over time that maybe it's giving me those little extra finer results. Maybe. Some yes, some no. Some I would definitely agree that the Elegoo did a better job on. So I don't want to go ahead and say 100% that it's better than the P1P. I don't think that that would be a fair assessment. However, I am 100% comfortable saying I'm getting, at bare minimum, the same quality as what I got on my P1P. So now let's talk about how long things took. When I was going through the regular PLA Plus using the Elegoo Centauri, I was able to print this in about 9 hours and 54 minutes. And again, it came out with great results. When I went ahead to the P1P version, this came out, assuming it did come out perfectly, this ended up coming out at 10 hours and 9 minutes. So basically, this is about 15 minutes slower than the Centauri Carbon. When it came to the PLA Meta, and I was doing the adjusted height variable that will give me a little bit smoother finish on the top, I ended up getting this done in about 11 hours and 16 minutes. And then when I went ahead and did it on the P1P, I ended up with 11 hours and 41 minutes. Here, there was about a 25-minute difference between the P1P and the Centauri Carbon, with the Centauri Carbon being a drop bit faster. So one thing I do want to say about those small little improvements on the speed, look, you're printing something for close to 10 hours. For you to go ahead and get something done faster in 15 minutes or 25 minutes, that's not enough of a justification to just jump on another printer. I think Prusa said it best when it came to their print times and their quality. They're not going to compromise their quality in order to give you a 10-minute savings or a 20-minute savings. It's just, why risk a print that takes you over 10 hours to squeeze out a few extra minutes? It's just not worth it. And so for that reason, while even though, yes, the Elegoo Centauri might be a smidgen faster, it's not really a metric that I would make my decisions. Here's the thing, sometimes it's better to be slower if you want better quality. I actually agree with Prusa when it comes to this. So really long prints, I really don't care if I'm saving 15 to 25 minutes. Let's break down the specs on the Elegoo Centauri. There's actually the Centauri and the Centauri Carbon. The Centauri is basically what you see here, just without the enclosure and some of the extra features here and there. But in terms of print quality, capability, it's exactly the same machine. And that's very similar to what we see with Bambu Lab P1S going to the P1P. If you just take away the enclosure, basically most of the specs are all the same. And if you're doing just PLA, you don't really need the Centauri Carbon. The Centauri would probably be just fine. Now, the Centauri goes for about $199, which is insane. That's just a crazy price for a consumer, ready-to-go, pre-built Core XY printer. Now, if you do want to print in things like ASA and ABS, and you need a hotter chamber on the inside, and you need a higher hot end, well, then that's what the Centauri Carbon is for, and that goes for about $299. This would be very comparable to that of the Bambu Lab P1S. Now, both of these printers, in fact, all of these printers, both Bambu Lab and Elegoo, they all support a 256 by 256 by 256 print size or bed size. And in terms of its speed, there's a 20,000 millimeters per second acceleration speed across all of the printers. The max printing speed is about 500 millimeters per second, but realistically, we don't really go that far. Usually we're printing somewhere in the ballpark of 250 to 300 millimeters per second. Now, in terms of the max temperature on these hot ends and the Centauri Carbon, you can hit as high as 320 degrees Celsius. That is actually a little bit higher than what you can do on the Bambu Lab P1S, which maxes out at 300. It is a little bit better there. When it comes to bed temperatures, the bed temperature on the Centauri Carbon reaches a high of 110 degrees Celsius. Compare that to the P1P and the P1S, temperature is about 100 degrees Celsius. When it comes to the LCD screen, I think we could all agree that this large 4.3-inch color touchscreen is a nice value add, something that obviously people have definitely wish they had on the P1P and the P1S. I've been fine getting by without it, but having a larger screen certainly improves things and gives an extra value add to the machine. So one of the differences between the Centauri and the Centauri Carbon is that the Centauri Carbon also has an activated carbon filter that's built into there, and you can replace it. They actually recommend that you replace that if you're doing PLA, usually about once every year. And then if you're doing things like ASA or ABS, they recommend probably to do it once every 3 to 6 months. Both the Centauri Carbon and the Centauri both come with auto leveling, input shaping, auto Z, basically everything that you expect from most 3D printers today, they're all in here. So now let's go ahead and let's look at the comparison based on pricing. As I mentioned, the Centauri Carbon is $299 and the Centauri is just under $200. If you compare that to the P1P, that sells for about $549 and the P1S sells for $699. So if you were comparing the P1S against the Centauri Carbon, that's a huge saving. To go from $699 to $299, that is a huge difference. So that's just crazy that you could get 2 of these for the same price as one Bambu Lab P1S. So that is something that I just can't ignore, and I don't think you can ignore either. Now, another thing about the Centauri Carbon is that it comes with a built-in camera for monitoring your prints. The regular Centauri does not have that camera, and the P1P and the P1S both have the cameras built into there. Now, when it comes to the Centauri Carbon, we actually don't know what the resolution is. I looked on their website. I couldn't find any information of its resolution anywhere. So if you happen to know the resolution of the Centauri Carbon, please put it in the comments below. Okay, so we talked about a lot of the similarities between the Centauri Carbon and the P1 series. Now let's talk about the differences. One of the biggest differences right out of the gate is that there is no multicolor solution for the Centauri Carbon as of right now. There is a poop chute on the back, so we know that it's coming, and we know that they've mentioned that it's supposed to be released in Q3 of 2025. Now, another thing that's a very key differentiator between the Centauri Carbon and a Bambu Lab printer is definitely the software. So there's just nothing that justifies getting the Elegoo Slicer software, in my opinion, over just using Orca Slicer. I would just say to companies, hold off before releasing a slicer unless you can meet some of those standards. And I think syncing your cloud profiles and your printer profiles are imperative. I think that's a must today. And I think today having a mobile app to be able to remotely monitor your prints is definitely a standard we can see through most 3D printing companies. With that all being said, the fact is this is a fantastic printer, and if you use it with Orca Slicer or Elegoo Slicer if you so choose, yes, there are some shortcomings when it comes to the software, but I don't know if it's enough for me to say, well, I'm not going to end up getting a printer like this when it's half the price of some of the best competition out there and it produces the same level of quality. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna definitely say that I am super impressed by the Centauri Carbon. And I think that what people have been saying out there is definitely true, with an exception. I don't think that it's necessarily significantly better, and I don't see enough evidence to say that they're not on the same level. I think that when most people are comparing some of their printers today, and they're forgetting the fact that there might be a year worth of usage in that printer. And so it's not always the fairest competition. I think that if I were to take a brand new P1S or P1P out of the box, those subtleties might disappear. But with that being said, the differences are so negligible, they're barely noticeable. And for that reason, I would say that the quality really is there. So I would definitely say that if you're gonna call it a clone, I would say it's a clone in a good way, kind of like Star Wars clones before Order 66.
Very impressive.
I'd hoped you would be pleased.
They were good. They were good clones, and there was nothing wrong with them. So anyway, I would definitely recommend to both schools and makers all over that if you don't really care about the Bambu Lab ecosystem and you're going to be maintaining these printers as a teacher, or you're an experienced maker or owner of a print farm, I would definitely consider getting a bunch of these. Now, if you're a parent, you're a beginner, or you're a teacher who's going to have the students interfacing with the 3D printer and software, I would still recommend the Bambu Lab because it's more beginner friendly and it's really simple for new makers to get oriented with the world of 3D printing. With that being said, I highly recommend this printer. All right, so that wraps it up for the Centauri Carbon. I'm glad I got a chance to finally unbox this and review it and compare it. I hope I answered some of your questions. And again, I want to remind you, I pre-ordered this printer. Elegoo didn't even send this to me to say, hey, do an unboxing review. I asked. They didn't respond, so I bought it on my own because I couldn't ignore the price, and I really wanted to see, could this really perform? Anyway, I'm so happy I got this printer in the end, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Happy printing!